Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree Buonomo. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. Today I'm going to be doing my June wrap up and I don't have a ton of updates, so this is where I'm going to talk about the books I read, the things I wrote, and some personal life tidbits, and we're just gonna jump right into it. The first thing I'm going to talk about are the books I read, because I only actually finished 2 books, and I think coming off of May rereading Twilight just sparked a thirst for vampire stuff. Because it's not only books that I read that had vampires in them, but I also dabbled in some TV that had vampires. So I think I'm just on a vampire kick. I started off the month trying to read several books. Again, I know I've mentioned this for a couple months now. I was trying to read Empire the Vampire. I restarted it again. I just don't think starting on the audiobook with that particular novel is going to be my best interest. It's very dense and there's a lot of information that's packed in there. And I think I need to just start physically reading it, and then as I get a grasp of who the characters are, then I could jump over to the audiobook. So I kind of put that on hold, mostly because I was struggling, and I instead picked up the Sookie Stackhouse series once more. So I continued in the series and read From Dead to Worse. This is the 8th book, I believe, in the series. So at this point, anything that I would say is complete spoilers, especially if you've watched the show. By the time you hit book 5 or 6, it completely departs from the show. This, like I said, it's the 8th book, and it follows Sookie Stackhouse, a girl who is in her mid-20s, I think she's 25, and starts a romance with a vampire who comes to town, Bill Compton. And then from there starts to get involved with the magical world and finds out that there's tons of other creatures that she's never known. So by the time we get to the 8th book, there's a ton going on. There's so many love interests have been introduced. And in this particular book, her love interest from book 7 has gone missing. She's trying to figure out what that means, and if something bad happened or if he just ghosted her, and also starts to kind of remember other people she's dabbled with and their interest in her. And that kind of brings up, should I even waste my time waiting for this person to come back? That's the love plot line. And again, this is it's a mystery series as well, so it's mystery romance, so there's a lot more elements that go into the mystery. And there's several plots, but like I said, this is the 8th book. There's several plot lines happening, so it's really hard to talk about it, but overall, I really enjoy the series. I love it. I'm just, every time I pick up a book in it, I'm obsessed. And I'm sad that it took me so long to get to the series and keep reading it. But every time I'm just in a rut, I feel like picking up a book is great. So overall, I'd probably give it 4 stars. There were some small things that I just didn't care for, some things that made me roll my eyes, but overall, I don't really have many complaints about the series. The second book that I read / listened to was an Audible exclusive, and that was Impact Winter by Travis Beacham. So this, like I said, is an Audible exclusive. I believe it was written for Audible, and it's a full cast, full production audiobook. So instead of being read line for line, as many audiobooks are, there's a lot of things that are produced to sound like you're in there. So instead of saying, Abby opened the door, Abby would give dialogue, and then you would hear the door creak instead. So it was definitely an interesting experience. And this book is another vampire book. I'm not gonna lie, I did not know that it was a vampire book going into it. I actually had seen an ad for this from Audible on TV or YouTube or something like that, and I was like, that sounds cool, so let me put it in my selection to read. And then I realized it was only a 5-hour audiobook listen, so I was like, let me just do something short, and then it ended up being vampires. So what I will say is that the production on this is incredible. Hands down, it was worth the listen, just for the fact that I really felt like I was in a movie. So much so that there's a lot of jump scares in it. It is kind of made to sound like a horror novel, and there's jump scares and there's things that are happening, and so I'm not gonna lie that there was times when I was listening to it with my headphones on, and I would be in the middle of doing something, and something would slam or whatever. I'd be by my own door, and I jumped quite a few times. So as far as production value goes, it's great. As far as plot goes, it's definitely middle of the road. I would probably give it a 3 stars. I think I gave it a 4 upon initial listening, but then as I think about it, it's probably more of a 3. I did like it, but it's pretty basic as far as concept goes. The biggest difference between this and any other vampire novel is that it involves an impact winter, which I did not know, and I don't feel like this book explains things very well. It makes sense, but like I actually, and I don't know if this is just me, I was kind of dumb. I've never heard of the term impact winter before, and that is literally an ice age. So it's when a comet hits the earth, it throws up all this dust into the air, it blocks out the sun, and as a result, the temperature of the earth cools rapidly, we go into an ice age. And that's what an impact winter is. That is what they assumed killed off the dinosaurs. So that made me happy now that I know that, but I did have to do a lot of research. I ended up going down a rabbit hole because I was listening to it. It was a fun time, but I didn't know that. And if you don't know that term, then it might be a little weird because it's not actually explained. It's just assumed that you know it going into the audiobook. So I listened to about half of it before I finally looked it up because they kept referring to it. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then as far as like the rest of the characters go and like the plot of it, it's a very typical vampire novel where vampires have come out and are now feeding on humans. There's not many humans left. There's not much life force because there's an impact winter. So like not only do they have to risk like starvation and like death by freezing, but now they also have the vampires to contend with. There's very like run-of-the-mill cliches that involve it. Like you have the people who are so anti vampires and like you stake them no matter what, and then you have the other like people who were like, well, if I knew someone that got turned into a vampire, are they fully bad? You know, so that's pretty cliche, and that's pretty much like the whole plot is you are following the whole cast of characters, like it's in different points of view technically, and you're following all of them as they're on very different journeys. So you're introduced to all these people and how they're impacting each other. And overall, like I said, it was a good story, and I think the production is what really made it worthwhile for me. And I don't feel like there was a ton of explanations. Maybe it was because of how it was played, and that like a lot of like the context clues you're just gathering from the sounds and the noises instead of like actually reading it out. But I don't feel like tons of things were explained. So there was just some questions I had overall, but you know, I think between the production and the cast had a lot of recognizable names, a lot of people from Game of Thrones that I recognize their voices from, as well as Freddie Carter, who was in Shadow and Bone. So definitely a lot of good voice actors in that, and I think they did wonderful. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for an experience, I think it's a 5 out of 5. You should definitely listen to it. If you're looking for plot and like to get something more out of like your traditional vampire novels, probably not going to happen. And overall, that is all I read. I did start other things, and I'll end up talking about them in July because I should be finished with them by the end of the month. But I'm going to go right into some of the things I watched because, again, like I said, I ended up watching some more vampire stuff as well. It must have just been the kick. So first and foremost, I watched First Kill, which is a Netflix adaptation based on a Victoria Schwab short story. I believe it's in the compilation Vampires Never Get Old or something like that. And it was... I'm of two frames of mind. It's definitely campy and it's very cliche. So basically the same stuff I talked about in Impact Winter applies to First Kill, where you have like your vampires and your monster hunters, and you have people who, like, you have two girls that fall in love. One's a vampire, one's a monster hunter, and their families are opposing, and the vampires don't believe you can trust any monster hunters, and the monster hunters don't believe you can trust any vampires no matter what they look like. There's more lore in the short story / the TV show where like there's other monsters and there's like different levels of vampires, like a turned versus like a born. So there's definitely some interesting plot lines, but like overall it's definitely campy. Like it reminds me of a CW show. I do feel like it would be something that I watch like Riverdale, where like you just kind of go off and you're like, why is this happening? Or like, this is so silly. And then other times you're like, oh, I could really get invested in this. But I did think the writing of the show was a little lackluster, which was surprising to me because Victoria Schwab was like the lead writer of it. So I was very shocked. Oh, and I do think that TV writing is much different than book writing. I have no experience in TV writing or screenplays or anything like that, so I can't really compare from my own experience. On the one hand, like, it definitely was not the best show I've watched, and the writing was kind of okay. There was a lot of weird plot holes in it, things like the lore that contradicted. So that was kind of strange. And then like also things that really weren't explained, and things that never like like completed. So this show currently doesn't have a season 2 greenlit, to my knowledge, but like things didn't completely wrap up in season 1, which makes it like a little concerning, because I don't even know if they're going to come back to it, because some things that happened earlier in the season like were never touched upon again. So like there's issues like that, but there's a certain love I had for like campiness, and like the like reminded me of like the 2000s like vampire shows and novels that I just kind of loved. So it was enjoyable. And then I think like with everyone in the world, watched Stranger Things season 4, and I love it. I love the horror elements. I'm really happy they kind of brought back those season 1 vibes. I loved the horror vibes. I loved how creepy things were. I loved how they like kind of pushed the envelope with some things. And I like that it all tied back together. So it's definitely worth it. And I'm happy. I would have been happier if it wrapped up completely with this season, but it looks like season 5 is going to be the end. So hopefully like that'll wrap up very nicely. Like they kind of left a pretty big plot hole open in this season. So it's going to be interesting to see how they actually wrap it up come the end. But yeah, that was my TV watching. Moving on to the things that I wrote in June. I think I've been vlogging a little bit. So if you want to go check out my vlogs and get a little bit more in depth, then definitely do that. But in June, my biggest thing was to finish the outline for my July Camp Nano project, which was a co-written book about the Fae and trauma and healing relationships with Kelly Wright. We were able to complete that outline. We actually did it like the last week of June. There was a lot of issues between my personal life, Kelly's personal life, things that just kind of disrupted. Kelly got sick. So we probably would have had it done earlier, but our lives just kind of, always chaos somewhere. And at the end of the day, we ended up making it work. We finished the outline. And there's currently 26 chapters outlined, but we both kind of identified that this is a first draft. And as we're writing it, there may be things that come up, or there may be things that we want to add to beef it up, and the outline may change a little bit. But we had a good start, and 26 chapters is a decent amount, and I think we can definitely get somewhere with that. I mean, hopefully we'll finish the book in July, but you never know. There's not a huge pressure. It was mostly just to get as much drafted as possible in the month between us. I mentioned in my last wrap up that I've been doing an RP with some friends, and that's been going well. I am always thrilled to write that, and I like the story of where we're going, as well as just, again, having fun and not having like any type of expectations for this story. It's just something we do for fun. There's no end date to it. It's just a good time, and I love writing witches, so it's so much fun. I also started to run an in-person writing group at my local salt cave. So I've definitely had the salt cave in some of my videos in the past, and the owners asked if I would be interested in doing a writing group. So they offered to let me use the space for free, essentially to kind of do like a partnership of, I get to have the space to do some writing and being able to have that community, and they get some free promotion as far as, there's no payment to come into the cave, but it might make people want to come to the cave more often. So I had my first writing group the last Wednesday of the month, and I had 2 friends that came and 3 people that I've never met before. So it was really nice to actually have people to just meet and share, and it was a learning experience. Like, I'm used to doing writing sprints on YouTube, so hosting an event in person is a little bit different. Big shocker there. So I did have everyone kind of do a quick introduction, talk about what they wanted to write tonight, and if they're looking for anything in the group. And we had a good mix. Like, we had mostly casual writers in the group. I know at least 2 of them basically said that they don't have any plans to publish and they just like to write for fun. One does more like dungeon master writing and like plotting for their D&D campaigns. The other person mostly does RPs. We had 2 people that were more casual but would like to publish at one point, and then we had 1 person that did publish poetry books. I'm just not sure if they were traditionally published or self-published, but they have poetry books written, and they are trying to write a full novel because they've never done that before. So it was a good mix of people. So it was really fun. But I know someone at the end, like as we were already over time because it was supposed to end at 8:30, and it was like already 8:45, had asked like, oh, are we going to share our work? And that's not something we typically do when I do writing sprints online. So I was like, oh shit, like if you want to. And then it kind of got a little awkward because like I wasn't prepared for that. Like I didn't think anyone would want to share. So that's just something I got to keep in mind for next month. We're only going to do this once a month for now, but like I said, it was interesting. There's some things to keep in mind moving forward, but I'm excited and I hope everyone that was there for that night comes back in July. And on that note, the last thing that I really worked on in the month of June was the mermaid project that I'm currently working on. I did, especially the most writing I did was at that writing group where I was reading through and trying to tweak things and also writing my synopsis. So I got a couple more chapters in it, but I still have like 10 chapters to kind of read through, edit, and make better before I continue drafting in it. So there's still some work to do. I was having a hang up on, I typically write at my writing desk and I like to have my screen split. So I have like the synopsis on one side, my novel on the other, and I can quickly go back and forth. So I was getting hung up on like, that's how I like to do it, but it's not the only way I can do it. So I was like, when I could like take my novel upstairs and write in bed before bed, like I wasn't doing that on my iPad because it's such a smaller screen. So I'm trying to break out of that habit so that I can just write wherever I want. And then I feel like it's already been so long, but I think in the beginning of June, I did write a little bit in the rom-com. We had gotten some chapters done, but it's kind of taken a back seat for the rest of the month, mostly just because both of us have been incredibly busy. And I'm also waiting on Kate to write her chapter. So that's been mostly what it is. Like I probably would have written more in it, but Kate had a lot going on and just like was traveling quite a lot and doing a bunch of things. So she has not written her chapter and I don't want to go ahead until she finishes that because really the last chapters of the book are really dependent on how the first person beforehand writes. As of now, it just hasn't been continued by me just because I've been waiting on Kate. And lastly, I'll quickly talk about some personal life updates, which I don't think I have nearly as many as I did the previous month. It was a better month overall. There was definitely a lot of chaos in the beginning of June because of my brother. So if you missed the May wrap up, I would just recommend going to watch that because I don't really want to rehash everything, but my brother was in the ICU. So the first week of June was pretty much like visiting him often and hoping like that he was going to get back on his feet and be okay. And there was a lot of drama with that as well. So that kind of kept up throughout the entire month. Like it was not like a one and done thing, but he is home. Things are a little bit better ish, and we're working on like full recovery, but it's a process. Work has been pretty much taking up a good chunk of my time, but I'm happy that because my internship is at the same place that I work, that I am able to get paid for my internship hours as per what my organization agreed. So pretty much I can do my job and my internship up to 40 hours a week. And if they all fall within that time period, then that's all I work. And so far, since the beginning of June, like when school ended, I have been able to get my entire work done within that 40 hours, which I love because that means I'm not like killing myself by working overtime right now. And I am really trying to get more hours in because unfortunately a lot of clients in community mental health, especially during the summer months when like the sun's out and people are feeling better, they tend to cancel a lot more. And that's definitely happening to me. I'm having a lot of cancellations. I'm having a lot of changes in schedules, and I'm doing my best to just get more hours because I need a lot. I need 240 by December, and it's the beginning of December, not the end of December, but I did like the beginning of December. So 240 direct hours. It's not including the 360 that I need of indirect time. So my notes, like any kind of like trainings, anything like that, that's all additional. So I need 600 hours total, and the direct hours are the ones I'm more concerned about because I keep having so many cancellations. And then I was really hoping to bulk up more hours in the summer and get like more than half of them done because come the time that my school position starts again, I will be in school all day and I cannot take my intern clients until after work. So that's where I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to end up working like 80 hours a week because I'm going to have to go to my internship like every night after my actual job and get more hours. And it is exhausting. It's something that I knew was going to happen, but I was really hoping that the summer clients would have worked a little bit better for me. So it's still at the end. We're only halfway there, but I'm, you know, time is ticking and I'm still not I'm just making an average. Like, that's all I'm keeping. Like, I'm keeping the same pace, which is not a bad thing, but it's not great either. And then the only other thing that I did not film this year was I went to Philly again to visit my friend Mallory, and we also had her friend Charlie and my friend Barb all joined us, and we did our Lord of the Rings weekend. So last year, I'll link it up above, we did a Lord of the Rings weekend where I always go down to visit my friend Mallory in Philly. We started this tradition back in 2018, and we rewatched all of Lord of the Rings. Every year, I'm just obsessed. It's like such a good movie series. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do, and it never gets old. Like, I think the production and the quality and the storytelling is magnificent in the movies. I feel like the CGI for being early 2000s is still pretty great. I just love it. So me and Mallory started this in 2018, and then since then we've added a couple more people, Charlie and Barb, to come in, and this year was just great as well. We did the movie weekend, we got some great food from the Philly area, and we went to the Harry Potter experience, which was at the Franklin Institute. So yeah, that is it for me. I probably rambled way more than I ever want to, like I always do, but thanks for sticking around. Let me know how your June went. If you have any July Camp Nano plans and anything else you want to share with me down below, I'd love to hear how you're doing. So until next time, I'll see you then.